Good morning, colleagues from New York. Thanks for joining. This is I think the fourth webinar, but now in a series of webinars. I'll give you a very quick background for those of you who haven't joined the previous webinars before I hand over to Gerald de Meur and his team, who will go into the details on the green energy services and renewable energy. Having been a deputy in the field myself, this was one of my more favorite projects. I think this is a major area for the UN where we need to focus on more, particularly in business operations, and the BOS is a good framework for that. So just as a little bit of a background, with most of the BOSes coming online now, you'll see a shift in DCO happening in the way we reach out. Since the strategies and the frameworks are up and running, we'll be shifting more towards individual services. These are services that are usually high impact, which means they either have a significant cost reduction potential or a quality potential. And we're moving forward on standardizing these services. And what does that mean? Is that in the past we have had the UNCTs and the country teams often designing their own solutions, which takes a lot of time. And the quality levels, some are really good, some are okay, but the quality levels vary as well because not every country has the same skill sets available, right? So by standardizing these services and what we call standardized common service packages, it means that other countries can take this solution off the shelf. You'll still have to localize it, of course, but we will have designed these services with specialists in this field. Meaning that on the one hand, we hope to reduce transaction costs for you at the country level because you have more than half your work already done. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. And at the same time, we're standardizing the quality levels because they're complete packages that in most cases have been tested already. We will give the floor to different agencies for different solutions. So what you see in front of you, as I mentioned, this is a series of webinars. So what you see in front of you, we did the Humanitarian Booking Hub that was done together with WFP, where they spoke about the Humanitarian Booking Hub, which they do together with UNHCR. We've had Gender Responsive Procurement, which was together with UN Women. Disability Inclusion, which is EOSG, the Secretary General's Office, and us mainly. Today, Green Energy Services is with UNDP, and Sustainable Cafeteria is also with UNDP. Over time, you'll see more topics and more types of services coming up and with different entities. So pretty much any entity that has a mature solution that is ready for scaling through the BOS, we will give them the platform here to speak about their solutions. Ultimately, it's up to your UNCTs, of course, as always with the BOS, whether you want to use a certain service or not. Diego, can you go to the next slide, please? But for each of these services, the impact, what we're trying to achieve, is still the quality and the cost impact, which is the logic of the BOS. Renewables has both a quality impact as well as a cost impact. There's a social impact in terms of climate change, of course, and carbon footprint reduction and cost avoidance, of course, on our electricity cost. That goes for any of the services in the series. So the way what we call high impact services, high impact is defined in these two terms. So with that, I want to hand it over to Gerald, so that he and his team will take you over the individual services over this service in principle. You can ask questions in the chat. Our teams are on standby. Gerald's team will monitor the chat. We will monitor the chat so we can answer as many questions as we can. And at the end of this, Diego will handle the quality of the Q&A, where you can ask questions verbally as well. Some questions are just too long to type in the chat. So yeah, that's you're encouraged to use the chat box as well, just for thoughts or questions or whatever you may have. With that, over to you, Gerald.
Perfect. Thank you, Lars. I think Julia Schramm, Green Energy Engineer, will be presenting from Gerald's team today.
Oh, Julia, my apologies.
No problem, no problem. Thanks
it's early
a lot.
Morning, so it's.
All right. Thank you, Diego, and thank you, Lars. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here today. As Laura mentions, the idea of this webinar is to provide a brief presentation on the main services lines being offered in the BOS platform, specifically for green energy services and solutions, And the general idea is to go over objectives and benefits of these services and briefly introduce you on how to engage with our team for their implementation. So this webinar will be given on behalf of the Green Energy team. We are a part of the Information and Technology Management Unit of UNDP, and we are based in Copenhagen. And our mission, our vision aligned with UNDP's mission is to create smart facilities to build local capacity and inspire a movement. So in that scope, specifically as per the Green Energy team, our mission is to provide country offices and different UN agencies with green energy solutions to support in addressing some of the challenges this location faces when it comes to electricity supply, such as poor grid reliability. Sometimes locations can experience daily power cuts from the national supplier, or even sometimes locations who have, for example, diesel generators as the only supply for electricity, as well as lack of awareness when it comes to unsustainable electricity production and very expensive costs for electricity. So to address some of these challenges, the ITM unit proposes the creation of smart facilities with the goal of interconnecting smart technologies and people in the track of economic and social development. As we can see here in the quadrant presented, a summarized model compiling the main pillars that constitute a smart facility. In the quadrant in the upper left, we can see summarized the main solutions to address challenges on energy and mobility, such as providing solutions for renewable energy production and energy storage systems. And in the quadrant both quadrants presented in the right, they summarize solutions suggested to address security issues and infrastructure challenges, gathering multiple kinds of ICT solutions designed specifically for this purpose as well. But we also know that making products available for purchase is not enough anymore. So here's where big data and Internet of Things come into place. And these devices and these tools, they enable us to monitor and measure the development and deployment of all these projects, ensuring as well the quality of their performance. So in the context of creating smart facilities, the Green Energy team has put in place a very well-defined 7-step process known as the 7-step Green Energy Solutions. And this process is recognized as best practice by UNSDG for solar implementation. The implementation of this process is the core of the Green Energy Services lines being offered through the BOS platform for designing and implementation of the different green energy services. So right now I'm going to start by briefly explaining you, giving you an overview of the process as a whole. And further into this presentation, we can go a little bit into more detail of each step. So in a nutshell, it's an end-to-end process in the sense that it covers every step from data collection all the way into the implementation of the solution. In step 1, we rely on IoT devices to assess the current situation of a given location and then build a load profile. Once we have a very solid foundation for our business case, we move them to step 2. And in that case, this business case is a technical, economic, and environmental analysis to allow for a very well-informed decision on the optimal solution to be installed in the premises. Once we then have the green light in step 2 to continue with the process, we move to step 3. That's the procurement phase of the process. So it's a secondary bidding process where a tender is held among different LTA holders who have then the opportunity to bid with a technical and financial proposal for the requested solution. In step 4, then the winning vendor of the procurement stage goes on site to carry out a very detailed site survey where they can gather all the missing information they still need to work on the final design of the system. Then step 5 is when the vendor submits this final technical design, which is reviewed by our team to ensure as well the compliance with all the technical requirements specified in the procurement stage. Step 6 is then all about the installation and the commissioning of the system. And finally, step 7 is the operation and the maintenance of the installation that is guaranteed by the vendor for the first 3 years of the installation. So now going further in with a little bit more of detail of each step. As I mentioned, step 1 is when we gather all the data to build our business case. So we do this with the aid of IoT devices that are sent to the premises to be installed in the electrical network, and then we can monitor the electricity consumption and then build an energy load profile. This allows us to establish the specific energy requirements for the project and also to use this data for any kind of other green energy solutions we want to have installed in the premises in the future. The sensors, they send information to an online portal like the one you can see here in the screenshot in this presentation. And this portal is accessible with a username and a password and can be accessed all the time. It provides live data from the measurement of these circuits. The sensors can also be used to inform in case of power outages, as well as to promote energy efficiency measures and later visualize their results. One other tool I would like to present that we apply for step 1 is our in-house developed preliminary site survey application. We can also see a screenshot of the interface of this application. And this is basically a survey, meaning a set of questions that we send to be filled with all the necessary information we need to design our solution and develop the business case. So this information goes from price and reliability of the grid to the available space for the actual installation of the solar panels, detailed information on the generators, and so on. And this allows us as well to work into a lot of detail in our business case. So just one very brief example to show you also how these IoT devices can be used for energy efficiency is the case of South Sudan UNDP country office. In the experience we had when working with the country office, after the sensors were installed in the main line, we identified a very high energy consumption, but at first it was not possible to see where the consumption was actually coming from. So once we actually sent more sensors to be installed in several sublines in the country office, we could then identify exactly which appliances were responsible for this high consumption, isolate these objects, so we could then act directly on those for energy efficiency measures, therefore reducing the total energy consumption. Still within the scope of step 1, IoT devices can also be applied for different uses, such as monitoring the generators, power analyzers, AC motion and sensors, and so on and so forth. We have here a few examples. We can also provide support with the procurement of drones that can be used not only for site survey, such as the data collection in step 1, but also for any other communications purpose in the future. So once we finish with step 1 and we have all the information we need to start working in the business case, we move them to the step 2 of the process. Our business case is, as I mentioned, a technical, economic, and environmental analysis, which we develop and we can present to the UN country team to allow for a very well-informed decision on the solution to be acquired. Under normal circumstances, we present this document, as you can see here, an example with 1 or 2 different options that can vary in terms of required investment, size, and components. And then we can provide all the necessary support and information to define the best option that's going to address the needs and expectations of the UNCT. And the assessment our team performs to develop such business case is based on software simulations for design and optimization of the systems and some in-house developed tools as well to estimate total cost of the installation, the return of investment, and expected CO2 emissions as well that will result from the installation. So once we have the green light for the business case, we define the project we want to be installed, we can move ahead with the process, and that's the beginning of step 3, which, as I mentioned, is the procurement stage of this process. So this step is done in collaboration with UNDP Procurement Service Unit, who holds long-term agreements with different vendors that have international reputation. As I mentioned before, is a secondary bidding process in which we evaluate all offers received to ensure not only best value for money, but also transparency throughout the entire process. And also one very important aspect of this procurement stage is that to ensure the quality of the installation and also to guarantee it's going to serve for local capacity building, these vendors, they are required, among other things, to have a local partner. This local partner is going to be required to be available to go on site when needed, ensuring as well that this is going to serve for development of local capacity within the country. Once we finish step 3, step 4 is then when the vendor is requested to go on site and perform a detailed site survey. So this is when they collect any missing information they need for designing the system. They collect pictures and they finalize the proposed design. Within the step, they are required to submit a report from the survey, which our team analyzes to make sure everything is in place and all the information has been assessed. And then step 5 is when the vendor prepares then the final technical design of the system, which is also cross-checked by our team to ensure compliance with all the requirements we have previously specified. In this step, they also need to submit endorsement letters from the manufacturers of the main components to ensure the compatibility of the technologies and also to ensure that the system is going to work as it was designed to, and everything is into place. And then they have the green light to actually start procuring the components and shipping the goods to the location. Then once the design is approved, we move to step 6, which is the actual installation of the project. Within this step, the vendor is required as well to collaborate with our team through a project plan covering all the main activities and milestones for this installation. So our team can use this document as well as some kind of project management tool, cross-checking the development of the installation and making sure everything is going smoothly according to the plan. Then once the system is installed and the user acceptance test is performed, it's time for the vendor to provide training to people on the ground. This training is basically for basic maintenance and the key aspects of the system. It also covers some key aspects of energy efficiency and smart use of appliances. And this is done especially to ensure that we are also promoting local capacity building along with these installations. Our step 6 is then concluded with the official commissioning and inauguration of the system. And we really like to highlight that communication efforts are very important throughout the entire process, but especially during the installation. So all sorts of communications material can be developed during this step. This is also important because in the end, our goal is not only to provide green energy solutions to these different locations, but in order to fulfill our smart facility vision, we really want these projects to be advertised as much as possible so they can serve as showcases, inspiring a movement among the local community as well. So finally, once the system is commissioned, we reach step 7, and that's the operation and maintenance of the system and the final and longest step of the process. The key aspect of this step is that operation and maintenance is provided by the vendor for the first 3 years of operation as part of the total project cost defined in the bids. And in addition, our team also provides lifetime long monitoring of the system through an online portal and the development of biannual reports. Once the installation reaches this period, so the end of these first 3 years, we also provide support for drafting a term of reference for a new maintenance agreement with the local company to continue the operation and the maintenance of the system, ensuring the installation is going to continue to operate smoothly. So that was a brief and very quick overview of our 7-step process and its key points to ensure for a successful and high-quality green energy solution. We can see here in this dashboard an overview of our solar footprint and all the ongoing projects we currently have. We have right now 18 solar PV installations that have already been commissioned and are operating, meaning they're in step 7. But as we can see here, we also have many other projects that are under development around the world and across all these 7 steps. In addition, as well as I maybe have mentioned throughout this presentation, our team is fully ready to work with a different number of partners and in collaboration with different UN agencies. We can just see here an example of the different ongoing collaborators we already have and have had the pleasure to work with. And then just to finalize this presentation and allow for the Q&A session, I would like to briefly present here a summary of the different green energy service lines being offered through the BOS platform for UN country teams. So the first one, it's called the Energy Consumption Measuring and Monitoring Service Line. It's going to be referred in the practice notes many times as ECMM, and it consists mainly of the procurement and the installation of these IoT devices that I have mentioned for energy consumption measurement and energy efficiency. So in a nutshell, it basically covers step 1 of the process that I have presented, with the measurement and monitoring of the energy consumption, followed by a development of some sort of report and assessment of the data collected and the findings of this service. The next service line consists of a green energy mission, through which we offer the possibility of an energy assessment and an audit, where one of our engineers goes on site to assess all the different information of electricity supply within the location, identifying as well possibilities of improvement and maybe proposing energy efficiency measures that's gonna result in a lot of gains for the location. This mission may also include the green energy training that's provided by our team to build local capacity and raise awareness on the implementation of these renewable energy solutions. So in this training, we go into a lot of detail and very deep into this 7-step process that I have presented, and then how to design and implement these green energy solutions. And finally, the third service line covers the implementation of these solutions through the presented 7-step process, whether if it's for a solar installation like I have presented, or for the development of a business case to study the available possibilities, as well as for the procurement of solar-powered products such as solar lamps, solar kits, or solar water pumps. So we would just like to finish this presentation by showing here one example of a very successful installation we have in UN House in Namibia. I don't think we have enough time now to show this video, but we are happy to share this link and also some other links later in case you're interested to take a look on how an installed smart facility can look like. Finally, on behalf of the Green Energy team, we would like to thank you all for being present here today, and we remain available to arrange for a kickoff meeting for future engagement in case you're interested in one of the solutions presented. So I'm going to give the word back now to Lars, and thank you all.
Thank you, Julia. You've been extremely efficient. We like that in this kind of forum. Listen, how long is that video? Because we actually have like 4 or 5 minutes left on your slot. So if the video is 4 or 5 minutes, you can show it. It's often a good way to communicate a certain thing. You're muted, Julia.
Sorry, I'm gonna try playing. I'm not 100% sure if the audio is gonna work, but I can also paste the link in the chat here as well.
Maybe that's a good idea. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Colleagues, I see a number of, I'm gonna hand over to Diego for the Q&A in a moment. I see a lot of questions in the chat. We answer what we can. Julia, maybe you can also take a look, and your team take a look at the chat. There's a couple of specific questions that I prefer your team to answer. We've answered what we could. I want to highlight that we worked with this team when I was deputy in the field before this current post for our UN house, doing all the baselines, the costing, all that stuff that is difficult for people who are not trained in this to actually do, right? Even if your boss trained, it's a very particular area, right? And one of the reasons why we're doing these webinars is that many of these services, we have very good, and not just UNDP, that's also UNICEF and WFP and UNHCR and UN Women, you name them. We have excellent specialists who have services ready, but often within the system, it's not known these services are out there. So one of the objectives we have for this session is to first raise the awareness that these services are there and the teams are there. And also stimulate that that country teams can contact these teams, and they can actually help with the solution design to a large degree. So that means that there is already a tested package there. You don't have to redesign it and figure out how to do each step. So as I said before, it raises the quality of the solution. You're going to get good support. It saves you a lot of time in moving these services under your BOS forward. Now, renewable energy is definitely something I think has a high cost avoidance impact. It has a very clear return on investment, break-even points. And in addition to that, the UN also has that champion of change role, right? If we show in our buildings that we can actually power it by renewables to a certain level, that also sends a message to government and private sector. And to give you an idea of that, when we were working, this was Eswatini, it was a fairly small country. But when we showed our projects, what we were planning for our building to the government actually said, "Hey, I want this too on my government buildings." So we started working with the government, Last thing I heard actually that they're now putting solar on the hospitals. So you see a clear crossover from an operational piece under the BOS, which is operations, but it shows the crossover from operations into program, right? By having that exemplary role as well. With that, Diego, why don't you take us to the questions and answers?
Sure, Lars. I think Zamir, the global lead on business operations strategy, wanted to cover the rollout and how to implement these services at the country level. So over to you, Zamir.
Thank you, Diego. And in the meantime, maybe we can group all the questions and bring them up for the team to respond to those where possible. Colleagues, I just wanted to mention, similar to all the other high impact common services, we have a very specific category created under the BOS online framework or online platform, where you can see energy efficiency common services categorized under environmental sustainability management service categories in the common admin service line. So there is a very specific area where you will have a set of common services where you can start from mapping the energy gaps or energy efficiency mapping, what Julia was referring to, ECCM. That will be basically the start of the work for UN country teams and operations management teams to identify the main, basically, energy consumption area. And then there is additional common services so that you can do them step by step with the mapping, with the audits, with the training, business case development, and then different solutions. So you might not be able to proceed with all the solutions in one go in your BOS, but you do have a choice to proceed, let's say, with solar panels, and then with security lighting, and then with the other devices such as Internet of Things, so it's in a period of sometimes like during cycle of your BOS, you could basically cover all the areas that are recommended by our colleagues. The approach is the same as we have discussed in the previous webinars. We encourage all agencies to take this initiative as a common collaboration, as a common service, so that you could further avoid costs in terms of like development of the service at the country level and its installation and utilization. And then, of course, the team remains there, and you always see that in the next slides, that there is this a support structure for you. So Julia and their team in the Copenhagen have dedicated support available to all operations management teams where you would like to have this specific conversation in the OMT, and you would like to know how much is going to be the cost, let's say, for example, for your particular operations management team collectively. The team will be able to engage with you directly and support you. We have developed 5 practice notes around the area of energy efficiency, starting from the energy efficiency consumption monitoring all the way up to the installation and implementation of all the projects. This will be available in the BOS online platform and the UNSDG website, linked to these common services so that you can understand, as I mentioned, these services better. So again, going to the last slide of our presentation on what you can do if this is already, in case if your BOS has already been completed. But if you have a common service around energy efficiency identified in your BOS, I think rather than taking a new approach, or rather than trying to do this energy efficiency project on your own, you can basically utilize the expertise and the good practices that this team has already in implementation of this common service for your country offices. And if not, if your BOS has not been completed yet and is in the development stage, all the high impact common services are highly recommended to be included, depending on the context of your country, but you do have that chance to take that over now. So this is now very common for most of the colleagues, and we'll go back now to the questions and answers and see if you have any particular questions.
Great, thank you so much, Samir. We do have a couple of questions that have been put in the chat as well. I'm going to open the floor if anybody wants to raise their hand and as well voice their questions. The first question that we have is, what is the average expected time from first to last step of implementation? Yes, anybody from the green energy team that would like to address that?
Yes, I can certainly address that. This is Gerald. Perhaps I can also ask my colleagues to join in to unmute themselves. Julia, you're still muted. Giacomo and Marcella, you can unmute themselves, so we're more agile to respond promptly. The 7th step is a full turnkey solutions. And in our experience, we have seen from the moment we are walking into an office to do the assessment, evaluating the load, which is step 1, to where we have the inauguration ceremony, around 6 months is the average time that we take for the end-to-end project. That is, of course, if there's no delay between each of the steps. Sometimes it takes a few months to approve the business case and move on with the procurement and so on. But if you just add up all the time for each of the steps, it's between, say, 4 to 6 months. But our experience is that sometimes the country likes to take their time to analyze the business case and then move on. Sometimes they change as well options during the procurement phases. So there's a lot of back and forth to adjust the solutions. So in practice, the average time that we've seen is more around perhaps 7 to 8 months to allow for these interactions between each of the steps. We do have a slide that shows the timeline for typical projects, so we can share that as well with you after the presentations.
Great, thank you so much, Gerald. The next question that we have for the green energy team is if the team is available to provide services to UN entities and at what cost? And with a follow-up to that is, how can an office participate in this training?
Yes, so the cost that we have is usually in the neighborhood of 5 to 8% of the total cost of a project. So let's take, for example, what that means. Let's say we have a 100,000 solar panel installations, which is quite a big solar panel installation. That would be maybe 100 solar panels, something like that. That translates between $5,000 to $8,000, and that includes a few hundred hours worth of hard engineering work to do the assessment using Internet of Things. So you have a real database assessment of your load, all the energy efficiencies, opportunities, and so on for each for the installation. So for each of the steps, there are hundreds of hours involved to develop, to do the assessment, to do the business case, to do the procurement, to do the site survey with the vendor and the design and installation and the actual operation and maintenance. Our experience is that we've seen many country offices that go to a consultant and basically ask them to do an assessment in a business case, so they know it, to get the ball rolling. And when we compare our prices with these consultants, it's a fraction of what these sort of consultant would charge. So I think this is a very competitive price from that point of view, and you actually get a full turnkey solution at the end of it, and not just at the end of the project, but on the lifetime of the solutions. There are a few reports that just came out, and the report highlights that 80% of the solar panel installations in developing countries, in rural area and so on, after a year or two turns into a graveyard. I can share with you also the reports on that, and that's a huge problem, because if you don't follow the 7-step, the vendors will typically just do the installations and then leave it into the hands of the users in the field. And not having always the time and the local expertise, eventually the system has a few outages, and next thing they know, they don't know how to fix it, and they just abandon it, and they're back to the old generators and so on. These 7-step, and part of the price is that the system is monitored 24/7. If there is one little outage or something, there is an alarm that are sent to the vendors and to the operation center in Copenhagen, and we do troubleshooting right away. Every 6 months, we do a biannual review to make sure we revisit the site to optimize it and add additional energy efficiency, so we continuously improve the solutions. So I think this is what I'm trying to say here is there is good value for money in having the fully managed and turnkey solutions. So that would be my answer on how much this is, the prices for these services.
Great, thank you so much, Gerald. There's a couple of other questions, more technical ones. One of them is asking, how is the data secured, or how do you ensure that the data is accurate for the IoT devices if the Wi-Fi signals aren't strong or stable? And how do you ensure or prevent security breaches?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. If you remember, if you go the slides that Julia presented up with the 4 quadrants of smart UN facilities, a solar panel installation is part of the smart facilities. And in this, you have an element called connectivity and cybersecurity. So when we do install the solar panel installation, it comes with a security gateway that provides all the security that you need and that can monitor the connectivity. So the system is always online. And if we lose connectivity, again, we get alarms and we can troubleshoot it. So there's a sort of firewall that protects the connectivity to all these various inverters and the solar panel installation. In addition to that, our Internet of Things provider are Internet of Things as a Service, IoT as a Service, that comes with a cloud-based solution, which is secure and all the data encrypted and protected. So we have these 2 layers of security, one on the physical connectivity side and one on the data side, where the data are securely saved, encrypted, with strong access management, so only authorized user can have access to them and display them into a dashboard and visualize them in the shape that you wish to do advanced business analytics and so on. So security is really key, and that's why we have these 2 quadrants, cybersecurity and connectivity as part of the smart facilities.
Great, thank you, Gerald. That's, I think, very useful information, as well as another question that we had regarding how the solar panels or these solutions are financed. if in a rented building such as a UN house?
Yeah, again, that's an excellent question. It is a little bit the same principle as a PPA, power purchase agreement. A power purchase agreement is when you're paying off your solar panel installation by paying over a period of 10 to 20 years the energy that you consume from these solar panels, and you get that installed on your roof. And then the question is, what do I do when I sell my house? So there are thousands, if not millions, of houses in US or Europe that are under this framework, and the way it works is that you can simply pass on the contract that you have with the provider for your solar panels to the next owner of the house. And then you would say, well, and that works very well for a couple of reasons, because the owner of the house, it's the new owner of the house has a very strong incentive to take on the contract, because it adds value to the house, it reduces his energy bill, so on and so forth. So even if you sell your house in a few years and you are not sure if you would be making that investment or not, well, it is a good investment because it adds value to your house, and when you sell it, it's more attractive for the buyers, and then you save money. Same thing for the UN with our buildings. So we had installation in many buildings where we had relocated, or even in some instances where we knew we would relocate in a couple of years, and we still went ahead with the solar panel installation for this exact same reasons, that when you put solar panels on a building, it is an investment. It adds value to the building, and it's easy to pass it on to the next leaser, or to, if you're the owner, to recoup your investment because it will add value to your properties. I understand that in developing countries, it's not that obvious. The market is such that not many people can afford it. But then again, it takes us to what the UN is all about. The UN is about development and so on. So we've seen in many cases where UN agency would make a donation to the next occupant of the building, in the form of giving up the solar panel installations. So yeah, so that's how we pass on the solar panel installation that we had installed in the building that we have to give up. And I would caution maybe people that would say, well, you know, why install solar panels on this building? We're just a leaser, and we may be leaving in a year or two. We've been discussing with the foreign ministry where we are to move to a different building. And the problem with that is that it's a bit the chicken and egg thing. If that's the case, you're not willing to take the risk and always use some uncertainty not to install solar panels, you're always going to find some uncertainties and never install solar panels. So we're there to provide a showcase and inspiration to the people we serve, and that's why I think we should be more tolerant in installing solar panels in the building that we occupy, even if we are not 100% sure that we would move to another building and so on. And even if we're not 100% sure that we can recoup our investment by selling it back to the next leaser. Thanks.
Thank you, Gerald. As a follow-up to that, are there any of the solutions or panels transferable to a different facility? Or all of them, as you said, once they're installed, they need to stay there, and you'd have to transfer them to the next round?
Yeah, we can maybe share a business case with you. We've done a business case for Tanzania, or maybe I'm wrong. I think it might have been a country in West Africa, where after 2 years, the UN agency moved to another building, and they were going to take with them the solar panel installations. And yes, they would recoup maybe 50–75% of their investment, and they would lose 25% because of the cost of deinstalling and reinstalling. So that's a pure business solution based on the business case. Is it better to sell it back or to make a donation and install brand new on your next building, or to deinstall and reinstall? I would, just for the sake of the message that we send to the host country, when you disassemble solar panel installation, you send the wrong signals. You're basically saying, okay, that did not work, and now you see what happened. They are getting rid of this installation, and they just installed it 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's money down the drain. So for that single, I would say, political and perception point of view, I think I would add this as a cost for choosing the options of deinstalling and reinstalling your solar panel installation from your old building to your new building. But it is possible to move solar panel installation, of course. It's a lot of physical work because you have to go on the roof and take out the solar panels, remount them, and also you have to rewire the building a little bit because you have to deinstall all these inverters and so on. But yes, it's possible.
Thanks, Gerald. I know there are other solutions also, like the street lights and the water pumps or the solar home kits. Are those more transferable and not so location based?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything that is falls into the category of solar appliance are very easy to move. They're almost, you put them basically on a truck, and then you take them from point A to point B. We also have actually transportable solar panel installation that comes as a kit. So it's a container, and it is a deployable rack mounting structure where you just put your solar panels on, and it is basically plug and play and a little bit like Lego blocks. So this is also transportable, but this we use in the context of refugee camp on a very temporary solutions, and then so on. Elections, say we are a health clinic when we face a crisis. Where we have these polling election stations or these health clinics that are temporary, and we just ship these containers that are basically transportable solar panel installations. So for these type of solution, yes, a resounding yes, it's very easy to relocate.
Great, thank you so much. I don't know if at this point we had also sent a surveys, 3 simple questions that will help us improve the webinars, make it more useful, and get your feedback. We also sent out a small Microsoft Forms if you want to leave a little bit more feedback and write some words, suggestions. I know we're coming almost out of time. Lars or Samir, if you would want to chime in with any of the things that have been shared regarding more specifically to implementation.
Thanks, Diego. Yeah, colleagues, we're coming at time. I just want to stress what Samir already highlighted, that for those of you who have your BOS already logged in, use your first review. It's a flexible system, right? So you can even at any point you can open your BOS and add services, or you can use your planned review cycle to add in different services. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't start. I mean, you can prepare the services and add them in whenever you plan for it. For those of you who have your BOS in development, it's probably a good time, if this makes sense, and once you had the discussions at UNCT and OMT level, to consider adding these or any of the other services from the series being it disabilities or the gender responsive procurement that we already covered in previous episodes of this webinar. Again, the objective is to give you as easy a package, as standardized package as possible. And we will continue to give the floor to different entities that already have these services ready, so you can link up with them. Gerald's team is available, as I mentioned, so we hope you found this useful. Please, as Diego said, give us just click on the survey and be open about it if you think you see things differently or that we can enhance, and let us know, because these are running webinars. We will keep on doing this throughout the year. Probably a couple of them every month. Some may be relevant to you, some not, but we're trying to tune this as much to your needs as possible. And that's why these polls come in. But anyway, thank you for your time, Diego. Thanks for sharing as well. Well done. Gerald and your team, and Julia, really exciting stuff. To me, this is 21st century operations where the UN should be. One last point I want to highlight, resource mobilization. I saw a couple of questions on it, but not that many, which surprised me a bit. Also, speaking from experience, it's still a bit of a struggle. However, we are working on active resource mobilization, so we're working on that as we speak. We're doing what we can to get the capital in. Some entities have capital funds for these, and some don't, which was, for example, in our case, an issue. But the different UN entities have different setups where the capital is available. And we have had solutions, for example, where some of the entities actually put the capital up, with the other entities who don't have the capital paying that back over time. For example, for electricity, where their electricity, instead of paying electricity to the electricity company, they would kind of pay it back to the other agencies, and that way raise that money. There's different solutions for that, but Gerald's team and our team are available if should we reach that stage. Thank you very much for attending, and I wish you a good morning, afternoon, evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Gerald. Thank you to the Green Energy team. Just a small reminder, next Tuesday we'll be having the Humanitarian Booking Hub focused specifically on the fleet management and mobility services. And then on the 17th of February, we'll have the sustainable cafeteria. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be sharing the recording as well as the presentation slides, both on Yammer and on the chat. Have a great day.